Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Retro Game Gauntlet Reviewcast. I'm your host Torzvik, and this week I played Gauntlet Legends for the Nintendo 64. It's lucky that I happen to get a game from the Gauntlet series just here as I close out what I effectively will be calling Season 1 of the Retro Game Gauntlet. Gauntlet Legends is a hack and slash and was developed by Atari, released in 1998. Midway published the home console versions. This comes about a year before Midway renames Atari to Midway Games West. This is the result of there effectively being a tale of two Ataris at the time. The story of Atari's messy history is long enough to have its own video, but for now I'll give a quick setup. June 26th, 1990. The software division of Atari, Atari Games, was bought by Time Warner, the merger of Time Inc. and Warner Communications, integrating it into Time Warner Interactive. Keep in mind that I did say their software division. This will come into play in a bit. During this time, the Time Warner Atari division was known as Tengen. You might recognize Tengen as the most well-known unlicensed publisher on the NES. It's apropos, actually, that one of the 3 licensed games that they did release was Gauntlet for the NES. In April of '96, Time Warner Interactive traded Atari rights to WMS Industries, WMS being a division of Williams that incorporated their ownings of Bally and Midway. 2 years later, Midway left WMS to go independent, taking the rights to Atari games with them. Gauntlet Legends was then developed by the recently independent Midway with their new acquisition. This is the reason why some releases like Midway Arcade Treasures feature prominent Atari games. However, about 2 months after the release of today's discussion topic, Gauntlet Legends, Hasbro Interactive bought the rights to Atari's hardware division, the Atari Corporation, and began to use the Atari name again. To prevent confusion between the two Atari, Midway opted to rename Atari Games to Midway Games West. All this information may seem a bit irrelevant, but I think that understanding the mindset and reasons for a game's development is important to keep in mind during an analysis. Knowing the context can inform you a lot about the choices made during the development process. This game comes as a result of Yokozuna-sized monoliths fighting for pieces of the pie that was the expanding console market. Some of these are newcomers to the market, where others date back to before the pinball and casino days. As we move into the game itself, there is a phrase by Sir Bill Asimov that I would like to keep in mind. What's in a name? I'll probably be bringing this up anytime we encounter an IP explicitly resurrected to make a game, especially if the IP in question is primarily known for being a video game. Gauntlet Legends follows the tradition of its predecessors. The sorcerer Garm has summoned the demon Scorn from the underworld. Scorn quickly escapes to wreak havoc on the worlds of Gauntlet. Your goal is to seek out and stop Scorn's minions, and then banish Scorn himself. The task doesn't end there though, as you pursue Scorn to the underworld and take the fight to his doorstep. The game supports up to 4 players in a hack and slash dungeon crawl. There are 4 character classes to choose from in 4 colors: the Glass Cannon Warrior, the Tank Valkyrie, the High Speed Archer, and the Screen Clearing Wizard. You will cut your way through battlefields swarming with enemies to the tune of the famous Gauntlet narrator.
I've not seen such bravery.
Most of the game is broken into worlds, who are in turn broken into 4 stages, and are generally each ended with a boss fight. Within the stages, you will be unlocking doors and breaking down walls as you search for the exit. Along the way, you will also be searching for the 13 runestones needed to reopen the portal to the underworld, and 5 magic weapons that each provide a weakness to a boss in Mega Man-like fashion. With all that background and plot out of the way, we can roll into the breakdown. We can start from the top with character creation. First, we have the 4 default characters. Each of them has a favored stat. Warrior gets higher strength, Valkyrie gets the most balanced stats, favoring armor, Wizard gets high magic, and Archer gets high speed. Psst.
Valkyrie has the highest base stats.
There are 5 stats in this game. They are not defined perfectly, so if you understand anything that I'm iffy about, go ahead and shoot me that info. Health, which determines your max health. I think it's universally equal between characters, but I dunno. Strength, this determines your damage output. For sure it increases melee damage, but I'm not sure about ranged. Defense reduces how much damage you take. Magic increases the power of magic. Once again, to know if this increases anything about the turbo attack. As far as I saw, max turbo one-shots enemies anyway, so I don't know if magic has any effect at all on turbo. It might reduce cooldown, but I doubt it. Speed increases your movement speed. It explicitly does not increase attack speed. Not to get too close to the analytics section of the video, but your starting character choice won't have too big of a difference on your gameplay. More on why later when we start talking about gold. You will also have control over the color of your character. Red, blue, yellow, and green, just like classic Gauntlet. It is cute that these are not just palette swaps. These colors actually change significant portions of your model. For example, a green warrior is a William Wallace skin and a yellow wizard is an Egyptian pharaoh. You also get to name your character. You get 6 characters, which just so happens to be exactly one too few. Anyway, after character creation, you get dropped off in the hub. Starting off, there's only one world you can visit, the mountain. Here the game proper begins. If you've never played one of the original Gauntlet games or the 2014 reimagining, here's the lowdown. Each level is a maze where you search for the exit. To prevent your progress, you will encounter buildings called generators. As per their name, generators progressively generate enemies. Cutting through enemies isn't enough. You'll have to push through their lines and cut them off at their source. The size of the generator is relative to the strength of the enemies spawned. Occasionally, one of 3 special enemies will be placed in the field: ranged, golems, and death. Ranged enemies come in 2 flavors: bombers and archers. Bombers are less accurate and have a shorter range but do more damage. Archers are the opposite. They are accurate, long range, but do less damage. Golems are high damage, high health enemies. They tank your attacks and bring the slam right to you. They even stun you, forcing you to take more damage. Death you cannot fight. Death instead follows you, draining your health until he drains enough of it, or you cast a spell. I'm getting ahead of myself though. How do you fight in this game? A will begin a ranged attack in whatever direction you are facing. This is the attack you will probably be doing most often, and luckily, you only need to hold the button, not tap it. Next is melee. Melee is engaged by just walking at enemies, and you will begin to melee with them automatically. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gauntlet pros, but it seems to me that melee is intrinsically flawed. I don't know why you would put yourself into wounding range, even if it gives you a DPS advantage. I'm not bothering to put this in the analysis section since it's a Gauntlet staple. Finally is the turbo attack. You have a power meter that builds up over time. You can release your turbo attack by holding Z and pressing A. Depending on how much meter you have built up, changes what your attack will do. At max, you shoot out a wave that kills everything in your path. At 2, you will do a whirlwind attack to all nearby enemies for, frankly, not enough damage. 2 meters full was so worthless that I never really bothered trying to do turbo with only 1 meter. But more on the problems with turbo later. By the way, you may have a fair guess that I have a good number of complaints about this game, if just from the number of "I'll talk about that laters" I keep dropping. Next, we got 4 regular collectibles. Food, which increases your health. Luckily, not that I thought it was a bad mechanic in classic Gauntlet, the food cannot be destroyed in this game. Gold, which can be given to Summoner for upgrades and items. Keys, which are expended to open locked doors and chests. I never encountered a point where I was soft-locked because I spent all my keys on chests. This wasn't all that rare an occurrence in classic Gauntlet, the solution for which is that after a set amount of time passed, walls would open automatically. This isn't an appropriate punishment in this game though, since health doesn't tick down over time as it does in classic Gauntlet. My guess is that if you can organize a soft lock due to lack of keys, then you are just expected to then abort the mission. Finally, we have potions. These are bombs in shmup terms. You can use a potion on B, which begins a screen clearing effect. It actually only does a set amount of damage though, based on the magic stat of your character. You can also throw potions by tapping B while holding A. I rarely use this mechanic, but I also rarely use potions offensively. I opted instead to use them more as a panic button as you would in a shmup. There are also 3 special collectibles found sparsely across levels. First are obelisks. In each the mountains, castle, and village there are 3 obelisks to find. Finding all 3 obelisks in a world opens up the next world. So, mountains opens up the castle opens up the village, and the village opens up the ice caves. Next are the runestones. The first 4 worlds each contain 3 runestones, and the battlefield holds the 13th. Collecting all 13 runestones allows you to enter the final level, the underworld. And then there are the legendary weapons. Every major world, major I define as having more than one stage to them, contains a legendary weapon. The legendary weapons each give you an advantage against a boss of a world. Thought we were done with the collects? Too bad, we have other consumables. The consumables are as follows: 3-way shot, 5-way shot, speed boost, levitate, reflect shot, reflect shield, rapid fire, fire shield, electric shield, fire amulet, electric amulet, acid amulet, light amulet, fire breath, electric breath, acid breath, super shot, time stop, invisibility, phoenix, growth potion, shrink potion, thunderhammer, vulnerability, and halo. Well, let's get started. 3 and 5-way shot splits your range attacks into 3 and 5 bullets respectively. Speed boost greatly increases your speed. If I had to guess, I would say it maxes out your speed, possibly making it useless to someone who already has maxed out their speed. Levitate does something. I never actually figured out how this one works. Reflect shot causes your bullets to bounce off walls. Very powerful in classic Gauntlet, but less so here. More on that later. Reflect shield reflects bullets shot at you. It could be really overpowered, but honestly I forgot to use it against any bosses. Otherwise it completely negates ranged enemies. Rapid fire increases your attack speed. Fire and electric shield creates a melee shield around you that damages any enemies who touch you. Very effective, especially against short enemies who like to eat up your frames. The amulets increase the damage of your weapons. I'm under the impression that the different elementals are supposed to do more damage against enemies that are weaker to it, but I haven't seen any hints that support that idea, nor have I necessarily seen it in practice. More on that later. Electric, fire, and acid breath causes you to spray high damage in front of you in an arc. Super shot fires a shot similar to your turbo attack. Time stop, a rare item that stops all enemies in their tracks. Invisibility makes all enemies unable to attack you. A very devastating item to golems. Phoenix adds an additional ranged attack. The growth and shrink potions grow you and shrink your enemies. Don't know how exactly this affects gameplay, but I'm guessing the growth potion increases all your stats, and the shrinking potion reduces the stats of all the enemies. The Thunderhammer does a screen clear. I think this is the equivalent of max level spell. Invulnerability, which activates immediately and makes you immune to damage. And finally the Halo. The Halo causes death to heal you. The manual does describe a gold invulnerability that makes attacks heal you, but I never encountered it. The manual says it exists, and, well, his dad works at Nintendo, so he's probably right. We're done with the collectibles, but guess what?
We got switches.
Gotta push switches. What do switches do? I don't know, it does something over there. But wait, there's more. We got secret doors. Hit a wall, get a chime, get a secret. In each world, there is a level with a secret exit, taking you to a bonus level.
Get bonus!
In the bonus stage, you'll need to run through collecting coins. If you collect all the coins, or not, I guess just 50, get a +1 to the more on that later counter. You will unlock a secret character. From what I can tell, this is only aesthetic. The Dreamcast manual lists them as having stat increases, but there's a lot of differences between the two versions. There are boss fights at the end of each world. The boss fights take place in arenas. After beating each of the 4 bosses, you will get a pane of stained glass. After reconstructing the stained glass window, you can then go to the cathedral where Scorn is held up. Unlike previous bosses, the cathedral is both a level and a boss fight. Beating Scorn, you will be given access to the 5th world, the battlefield. Here you can find the 13th runestone. If you have found all 13 runestones, you can enter the underworld. Like the cathedral, the underworld is both a level and a boss fight. After defeating Scorn for the 2nd time, the sorcerer Garm is then banished to the underworld for his crimes. And with that summed up, let's move into the analysis. This review is getting big, but we're almost out of the woods. I always felt that Gauntlet games would work better as twin-stick games. Not that you have the option on the Nintendo 64. I'll start though with the classes. As I said earlier, there's not much reason to favor one class over another. They do have different stats and slight variations in their turbos, but it's all easily offset. From Summoner, you can buy stat upgrades for 800 gold. There's no limit to how many you can buy outside the stat cap, and as long as you aggressively sell items, you'll have no problem buying an abundance of stat upgrades. Each of the characters may as well just be a skin swap because of how easy it is to get max stats. It's easy to aggressively sell items as well, as there's an overabundance of them. I would even argue that you should be selling most of your items just to make your inventory manageable. We could easily drop half the items in this game. We don't need 2 elemental shields, 3 breaths, and 4 amulets. Time stop and invisibility are effectively the same, so drop one of those. Same goes for growth and shrink potions. Reflect shot is cool in Classic Gauntlet, but it doesn't serve much of a purpose here. There's not too many situations where you get locked down on a corner where you wouldn't just turbo through the wall anyway. With the remaining items, we still have fat to trim, but with the obvious redundancies removed, we're down from 25 to 16 items. The problem with so many items is the menuing problems it gives you. Usually you want to whip out a consumable in specific situations or when things get out of hand. When suddenly beset on all sides, you don't want to have to scroll through 20 plus items while your health ticks down, especially when the B button is right there to cast a spell. I would even suggest selling most of your items, since it will increase the effectiveness of the ones you keep by making them more accessible on top of funding you for stat increases. Next on my list of complaints is the turbo. Turbo recharges over time. A fully charged turbo one-shots everything smaller than a golem. The problems are twofold. First, the first 2 levels of turbo are basically useless. They don't do anywhere near enough damage or range to justify using them at all. The wizard's level 2 turbo is alright, but the level 3 is still far superior. Second, there is no cost benefit to charging the turbo. There is no mechanic in place to stop you from casting a level 3 turbo, putting down the controller until it recharges, creep forward, rinse and repeat, bounded only by your patience. In Classic Gauntlet, your health drained over time. Not really sure why they dropped that, when it would have perfectly offset the temptation to just hang around and recharge your turbo meter. On the subject of health, we can talk about the health grind. As I could tell, there was no way of refilling your health outside a level. Because of this, I wound up grinding the first level at least a dozen times to refill after boss fights or particularly difficult levels. Grind like this is an unnecessary waste of time. I get what they were going for. They were trying to carry life over as you do in Classic Gauntlet. There's many solutions to this problem, but I'll cover 2 of them. First is the hardcore solution. If they really want to capture the Classic Gauntlet arcade spirit, they should go further and just make levels not revisitable after completing them, forcing you to play much more conservatively. The alternative is to make the game significantly more difficult, possibly bringing the health countdown back, but refilling your health every time you return to the hub. Possibly only up to a point, let's say 50% of your max. It's possible that they tried to implement a countdown, but there was a problem due to the massive size of the levels. It's too easy to get lost in massive open fields and caverns. You do have a compass, but the camera keeps rotating, throwing off your sense of direction. They probably should have stuck to more narrow corridors and rooms, or provided a minimap. Though, I'm guessing they didn't provide a minimap for technical reasons, bringing me to my final point. So, I was thinking about that mystery of the bonus stages, which I brought up earlier. The manual says that you need to collect every coin, but you only collect 50. That leaves you just sitting and waiting for the time to run out, with most of the bonus unexplored. I noticed something though. First, the coins are stored in the same window as the secret weapons. So, I did some maths. 5 different coins, and 50 of each, plus 5 weapons, puts us at 255. 1 byte. My only guess is that there was a lack of communication while designing the game. That or things got rushed and eventually scrapped. There's no excuse to leave the bonus levels basically incomplete due to memory constraints when I'm sure they could have dropped a majority of the consumables. All that being said though, the game is honestly fine. The core gameplay works, pacing is smooth, and difficulty ramps up appropriately. There's no real problem with collision or the controls. If I had to hazard a guess, I would say that this dev team was made up of novices or they were on a very strict time limit. Classic Gauntlet is a major contributor to modern gaming, and Gauntlet Legends follows meekly in its footsteps. To the question I posed at the beginning of the video, what's in a name? Is this superficially Gauntlet, without any of the substance? I'd argue no. Gauntlet Legends does provide an authentic Gauntlet experience. You'll probably have fun playing it, especially with friends. It has an abundance of design flaws, but they will have minimal impact on your playing experience. I give this game a solid 3 on 5. Anyway, I'll close this out with a shill. Go ahead and smash that approve button and thumb vote this video likewise. I post a poll every weekend to decide what game I'll play next on my Twitter. If you would like to see me play any of the Gauntlet games live, you can find me on Twitch. Links for all this stuff will be in the description. Intro and outro is Enlightenment by Instant Remedy.